Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to find a princess to marry. But she would have to be a real princess. He searched and searched. He met one princess after another, but there was always something the matter. They just weren't real princesses. So at last, he returned home without a wife. One night, there was a terrible storm. The lightning flashed, the thunder roared, and the rain fell down in buckets. In the midst of all this noise and rain, someone knocked at the palace gate. The old king himself went to open the gate, and when he pushed it open, he found a young woman. "I am a princess. May I come in?" she asked. The old king looked at her. She was dripping wet and looked a terrible sight. The king did not quite believe that she was a princess, but he let her in anyway. The queen gave her dry clothing and offered her a bed for the night. "I'll find out if she's a real princess," the queen said to herself, and she placed a tiny pea beneath the mattress. Then she placed 20 mattresses on top of that and 20 down comforters on top of that. The girl carefully climbed onto her tall, swaying bed and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, the queen asked her, "How did you sleep?"
I didn't sleep a wink. Heaven knows what was in that bed. I feel as though I'd been lying on a rock. I'm black and blue from head to toe.
The king and queen and the prince were pleased. At last, they had found a real princess. Otherwise, she could never have felt that tiny pea through 20 mattresses and 20 down comforters. Only a real princess could be that sensitive. So there was a royal wedding, and the prince and princess lived happily ever after.
Babies first.
Oh my, baby's full of life, getting so excited she's about to burst. Think I know why it's so, everything is baby's first. Baby's first ball, baby's first doll, baby's first bottle, baby's first rattle, baby's first stuffed bear, baby's first high chair, baby's first tub bath, baby's first photograph. Oh my, baby's full of life, getting so excited she's about to burst. Think I know why it's so, everything is baby's first. It's a bright new world of sights and sounds. Baby wants to see it, can't keep her down. Crawling on the floor and everywhere exploring, baby loves to move around. Baby's first steps,
Baby's first steps.
baby's first pets,
Baby's first pets.
baby's first bubbles,
Baby's first bubble.
baby's first scribble, baby's first pickle, baby's first tickle, baby's first coos, baby's first pair of shoes. Oh my, baby's full of life, getting so excited she's about to burst. Think I know why it's so, everything is baby's first. everything is baby's first.
What can I buy Dad for his birthday tomorrow? Says Rupert with a big sigh. Something he'll use in the garden, says his mum, is what you should buy. Rupert thinks it's a great idea and sets off for the garden shop, but to get there has to wait a long time at the bus stop. In the high street, he sees his little guinea pig chum, Gregory, who says he's bought a garden gnome for his granny. Where did you buy it? Rupert asks. It's just the thing for my dad's birthday. So Gregory takes him to a shop where lots of garden gnomes are on display. The shop assistant's very pleased to show the little bear a garden gnome. We also have a rabbit, he says, both hand-painted and made from stone. Rupert chooses the garden gnome, and to the bus stop the two chums go, and they travel all the way, looking out of the window. Back at home, Rupert peeps round the gate, but his dad he can't see, so he unwraps the garden gnome and puts it on the rockery. It looks good, but he goes to see what it's like from a few feet away. When he turns round, it's been painted yellow, much to his dismay. Just then, he hears Gregory calling to him from the garden gate. My granny's gnome's turned yellow, he says. She's most irate. So's the one I bought for my dad, says Rupert. It gave me such a shock. And as Gregory returns home, he sees some yellow paint on a rock. There's more on the grass, and it leads across the common and into the wood. At the base of a big tree, it stops. Rupert wonders why it should. But then he finds empty paint tins hidden under a bush, and there are lots. Suddenly, a voice cries out, "What are you doing with our paint pots?" To the little bear's surprise, it's a garden gnome, but real, not made from stone. "Quick, you lot," he cries. "Come and get this bear. He's all alone." And more gnomes come out of the bushes and rush towards him. "Oh no," Rupert sighs as they tie his hands. "This looks pretty grim." He's pulled to his feet and led away with his scarf held by a gnome through thick woodland to their very secret home. But the entrance to their underground home is too small for the little bear, so they take him another way, which gives him quite a scare. Underground, as his hands are untied, he asks what he's been taken there for. "Our chief will tell you," says a gnome, knocking on a door. The door opens, and Rupert enters a room where the chief gnome's sitting. "Little bear, how dare you buy that garden gnome?" he says, frowning. "It looks just like one of us, and because of that, we'll never let you go." Rupert gasps. "So you painted mine and Gregory's gnomes yellow? We wouldn't have bought the garden gnomes if we'd known it would upset you." Hearing this, the gnomes feel sorry and talk about what they should do. "You may go home," says the chief gnome. "We didn't mean to cause a fuss, but please don't buy another garden gnome that looks like one of us." The gnomes lead the little bear out to a part of nutwood he doesn't know. "Don't worry," say the gnomes. "We'll show you the best way to go." But the gnomes are full of mischief, and they run away and leave him there. "They're only playing," a voice calls. "You're almost home, little bear." It's the chief gnome, and he tells Rupert the yellow paint has magical powers, and wherever his stone garden gnome stands, there'll be beautiful flowers. He also tells him the best way home, and on his way, Rupert meets Gregory. "The yellow paint makes flowers grow," he explains excitedly. Then he runs home, and when he sees the garden gnome, he can't believe his eyes. "Dad will be pleased," he says, with such a lovely birthday surprise.
Rupert, you're a wonderful bear, a
little kittens, they lost their mittens, and they began to cry.
Oh, Mother dear, we sadly hear our mittens we have lost.
What? Lost your mittens, you naughty kittens? Then you shall have no pie. No, you shall have no pie.
Here's to George, the curious little monkey. He must know what everything's about. Curious George, the curious little monkey. What's he up to? Let's find out.
Curious George and the dump truck. I need some more nails to finish this job, George, said the man with the yellow hat. Come along and wait in the car. George and his friend got into their little blue car and drove to town. On the way, they listened to the news on the radio.
There has been a robbery at Gilbert's jewelry store. The robbers were seen driving away in a red van.
George, said the man, I'll get the nails. You stay in the car, but don't get into trouble. George watched busy Main Street. Some workmen were fixing the holes in the street. They had a big dump truck that dumped piles of sand into the street. Then the workmen smoothed it out. What made that dump truck work? George was curious. The men stopped for lunch. George got out of the car and climbed into the truck. He pulled a lever. The truck began to dump. George pulled harder on the lever. It dumped more and more sand. Sand spilled all over the street. It spilled over a lady in a flowered hat who was carrying a shopping bag. It spilled over a man with an umbrella. And over a girl walking a dog. What an uproar. Everyone was angry. The shopping bag ended up on the girl, and the dog ran away with the hat. What's going on? Who's dumping all that sand? They cried. When the workmen returned from lunch, they saw the mess. Grab that monkey, they shouted. George was scared. Where could he hide? Quickly, he ran up a telephone pole. No one could reach him there. The angry workmen began to shovel the sand back into the truck. George kept watching. A red van was coming around the corner. A police car was blowing its siren. The police must be chasing someone. Maybe they were after George. Quickly, George climbed down from the pole, ran to the dump truck, climbed into the cab, and crawled under the seat. By mistake, his foot hit the dumping lever again. The rest of the truckload was dumped, and the sand pile got so high that it blocked the road. George covered his head and waited for the police to take him away. But they weren't after George. They wanted the men in the red van that had robbed the jewelry store. Now the police were able to catch the robbers and take them to their car. George came out of his hiding place. So you did this, said a workman. Wait a minute, said a policeman. Don't be too angry with him. He made it easy for us to catch the robbers. You're right, said the other workman. Just then, the man with the yellow hat came back. I can see you've had a busy day. Now let's go home and see if it's on the news tonight.
The robbers were caught on Main Street. police report a curious little monkey saved the day.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. He called for his pipe, and he called for his bow, and he called for his fiddlers three. Every fiddler, he had a fiddle, and a very fine fiddle had he. Oh, there's none so rare as can compare with King Cole and his fiddlers three.
Lunchbox.
One of the nicest presents Paddington ever received was a torch given to him by Mr. Gruber. He used up several batteries reading under the bedclothes and only came out when he reached the end of a chapter or ran out of air. He also began learning the Morse code in case he ever had an emergency in the night. And it was while he was practicing it one evening that he had a sudden shock. Every time he flashed the torch, he received the same signal back again. He tried the first three letters of his name. P-A-D. Dit, da, da, dit, dit, da, da, dit, dit. It was all very strange. The light seemed to be coming from the direction of Mr. Brown's greenhouse, and it definitely needed investigating. In the morning, when it wasn't quite so dark. The next day, Paddington was up bright and early. Thinking the matter over, it seemed a good chance to kill two birds with one stone and test his disguise outfit at the same time. According to the label on the box, it was exactly the same as was used by Feathers Lock, the famous detective. By the time he'd finished, he felt sure no one could possibly recognize him. "Ah, there you are, Paddington," called Mrs. Brown. "I was wondering where you'd got to." "Paddington? I'm not Paddington. I'm Feathers Lock." "Yes, dear, but I should hurry up. Your bacon's getting cold." Paddington looked most upset as he made his way to Mr. Brown's greenhouse. It was bad enough having his disguise penetrated so early on in the case, but looking around, he decided there was also a definite shortage of clues. Apart from a few earwigs and a large marrow, it was almost bare. He consulted his instructions once again. Feathers Lock was a great believer in taking fingerprints. He even included some special powder in his outfit for that very purpose. Looking at Mr. Brown's marrow, Paddington felt it ought to have some very good prints on it indeed, and he lost no further time in getting down to work. "Talking of marrows," said Mr. Brown at dinner that night, "it's hard to believe, but someone's been inside the greenhouse and taken my special prize one." "That's strange," said Mrs. Brown. "I found an enormous marrow on the lawn this morning. I thought you'd put it out for me." "You don't mean... Well, not... This isn't it, my prize marrow. It was a special out-of-season one I was entering for a show." All eyes turned to Paddington. He seemed to be acting very strangely. "That was my best clue we've been eating," he exclaimed. "It was covered in fingerprints." "I think I've suddenly gone off stuffed marrow," said Jonathan. "Oh, it's all right," said Paddington. "I checked most of them. They're nearly all my own paw marks. I expect I made them when I carried it out of the greenhouse." The Browns watched in silence as Paddington crossed to the window and peered through the glass. "The thing is," said Mr. Brown. "Why?" "Because someone keeps signaling from the greenhouse, Mr. Brown," said Paddington excitedly. "They were doing it last night, and they're doing it again tonight. Look. Dit-da, dit-da." "That's not someone in the greenhouse," said Jonathan. "That's the reflection on the glass from your own torch." "The reflection from my own torch," repeated Paddington, hardly able to believe his ears. "What are you doing now?" asked Judy. "I'm sending another message," said Paddington. "An important one. Dit, 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 da, 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 dit, dit, dit. That means SOS in Morse code. It's for emergencies. It's short for help. I'm in trouble again.
From breakfast on all through the day, at home among my friends I stay. But every night I go abroad, off far into the land of Nod. All by myself I have to go, with none to tell me what to do. All alone beside the streams and up the mountainsides of dreams. The strangest things are there for me, both things to eat and things to see, and many frightening sights abroad.